This is part 3 of our 3-part series on Elementor form submissions. In this segment, we'll cover capturing form input by using one of Elementor's built-in hooks to write to our concert tickets table. We'll go over a modification of that hook and adding it to our child theme's functions.php file. We'll show format needed to write to that table, as well as troubleshooting and verification of the process. We use Elementor's built-in hooks to write to the database to take the records from our forms. If you go to developers.elementor.com docs hooks, you'll see Elementor hooks. And there's a whole bunch of documentation here. The ones we're interested in are the Elementor forms. So we click on that, and there's a bunch of form hooks. And the ones we want is Form New Record. If we go down to that, Form New Record, it gives us the code that we're going to use. We're going to make a variation of this to use in our code. Plus we'll paste a bunch of stuff in here and remove this. We are using Elementor's child theme, the Hello Elementor theme, and we created a child theme of it. We've created a file, backup functions, which is a copy of the functions file. And the theme is underneath WordPress content in your public HTML section. So public HTML, WordPress content, themes, and then we have our Hello theme that we created a child theme of. And now we created our backup functions theme. So we're starting out with our backup functions PHP, the raw functions PHP from our child theme, and at the end of it we're adding comments about the section, the new section that we're going to add, which adds the action hooks to process the form submission records. And we add a header and a trailer, and in between that we're going to paste the code. Now to paste code, if you're on a hosting system, you can't normally use just paste. You need Control-C to copy and then use Control-V to paste. So we've already copied it off of the Elementor site. Now we're going to paste it in using Control-V. Now we have Elementor's example for us that we're going to modify. Let's do a little bit of... You see here at the end it has an add action, Elementor Pro Forms New Record. So this action calls the function send custom webhook, which the beginning of this code that you're adding in creates that function send custom webhook. And what's in between where the function starts and where the function ends before add action is the code that actually does everything. Now we're going to make some changes to this. So the first thing we're going to do is remove this remote post. We don't need it. We're not going to use it. So we'll delete that. And the second thing we're going to do is to replace my form name, like it says here, to replace my form name with the name you gave your form. Well, we gave the form 80s concert tickets. So we're going to replace this, my form name, with 80s concert tickets. Now what this section does is it checks to see if the form or the thing calling this is the form 80s concert tickets. If it isn't, it returns and does nothing. If it is the correct form calling this, then it will go through and process the rest of this function. Let's take a look at what the next section of code does. Let me move this up for you. This raw fields, record get fields, is going to pull back all the fields from the Elementor form. And it's going to take those fields and put them into an array. Now, when it does that, as it enters each form, each entry, input entry into the array, it's going to take the ID for the field and the value for the field and put them in as a ID value pair. And that ID value pair is what's going to be sent to the database. Now if we just ended here and didn't add our code, because of the way this is set up, this is getting the records from the form. It's getting all of the records, all of the raw fields, all these raw fields. So that's all of the fields on the form. That's why you get the 25 empty submission fields, because it's bringing all of them back. And it's assigning a value in a field, and the ones that don't have a value, the headings and stuff, are empty fields, but it brings them back. So what we need to do is to add our code in here. That's going to tell it exactly what fields we want, what values we want, and that's what we're going to write to our table database instead of to a submission form. Okay, so here's everything I'm going to need to paste in there. And I did this in Notepad++, so I could, it makes it easier to check your syntax errors and stuff like that. So I will copy all of this, and since this is on a Windows machine and Windows application, I can do the right click and copy. But when I go to the host to paste this in, I have to use the Control V. So let's do that. Here we are in the host, and we're going to paste this in. We're pasting it in right above this last bracket, and you can see this bracket is highlighted, and it shows you the other where the function starts, and this is where the function ends. And we want to do it after the last step that happened, so that's that. So we're going to paste it right here by using Control V. And we'll add a couple of spaces at the end. And a couple at the beginning to separate where this started, where we just pasted in. Okay. Now this is all of our new code that does the processing. And that's going to be used to insert them into your submissions form, or in this case into our submissions table that we built. Now ID, my field, is an auto increment key field. I put that there. And then I have two form identifier sort fields, which are form ID, which I'm getting from the form using $post. That's how you get it. And form name, which I'm hard coding in because I'm using this just for this, so I can hard code in the 80s concert name. Now later on for another one I can put in a different name, and that way I can use this ID and or this name for sorting and or for retrieving data. Then I have the 6 forms HTML input fields that were missing on submission. And the method I use, or the method you need to use, is to use $post to get it from the form, from your posting form. And the field I'm getting is selected ticket, ticket amount, stripe amount, parking, special needs, and my options. And those are the names on the Elementor form, or on my form, that Elementor is not seeing or capturing. Then I take these and I put them into a new field name. In this case, type ticket, ticket amount, stripe amount, parking, special needs, and extra options. So I've taken selected ticket and renamed it to type ticket. I've taken my options and named them to extra options. That's because these names are in my database table. These names were on my form. So I'm reassigning the values to this. I have a var dump here that I've commented out, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Then I have my global WordPress database, the output, WordPress insert into my concerts ticket table. I'm inserting an array, and the array is all of the 13 fields that I need. So form ID, which is the field's form ID, form name, type ticket, and you can see now the names match up because previously I reassigned the names for my form. But these are the names that are in the table. So the Elementor names, I can just put the name that Elementor has, and as I mentioned before, it's scrubbed off the forms field. It only has the name that actually is in your this Elementor's process up here scrubs off the forms field, so you don't have to do that. But you do have to align with the table names that you have. So I've saved my backup PHP, the one with all the new code in it for the hook, and I've renamed my functions PHP to good functions PHP. And now I'll rename backup functions to just functions PHP so I can run it. And you see I have a lot of different backup functions. It's always, please don't just work on your good functions PHP. Make up backups and name them back and forth. So here it is renamed to just functions PHP, and I still have my good functions PHP. Now we can run it on our website and see how it works. So we pulled up our concerts tickets form again, and I've added in all of the same information that we added in prior. Then we're going to send it and look at our form information. Okay, so we have our web inspector pulled up. We're going to send the form. We have a form sent successfully. We have an AJAX file, and if we open up the AJAX file and look at the request, we can see that all of our names are in here that we gave it prior. And it's captured all the information for the ticket chosen, the ticket amount, the stripe amount, what our choices were for parking, special needs, as well as the Elementor fields of buyer name, first name, last name, the fields with the forms field in front. And if we look at the response, we have successful, and if we open up the raw data, it shows successful, no data here. So now let's take a look at our database. Come back into our PHP, my admin, and here's our record. And if we open it up and take a look at it, we see that our auto increment has increased by 1, so this is an ID of 4. It has the form ID, the form name, 80s concert tickets, the type of ticket, my chair, the ticket amount, $25, the stripe amount, which is times 100, parking sticker, no, special needs, yes, the special need is ramp access needed, extra options, yes, a reminder, and a not to send stuff. And then the buyer name, these are the Elementor fields, first, timer, FT at no mail, a phone number, bogus, and the date purchased. Now we don't have a date purchase in here, and that's because we haven't set this up correctly yet. And you have two ways to do that. You can actually have the date set here automatically as a default, so when the record gets entered it will put the date in, or you can pull it from Elementor. That's up to you, so that's why I didn't really put this in here. Now let's go take a look and see what the submissions form has for this same record. Okay, so here we are in our admin panel in submissions, and we pulled up the forms of the 80 concerts tickets for today. And here's the one we just entered that we showed filled in the database fine. Let's see what it looks like here in submissions. Whoops. Still submissions. All these are empty. It has lots of fields that we don't need. Did capture the Elementor fields, the ones that have the forms fields and then the name inside brackets, but it didn't capture anything else. So submissions still didn't work, but writing to the database to our concerts ticket table did. But things don't always work great. And what if we had problems with our form writing or getting data into our database table? What then? Well, then we revert to the var dumps field that we had commented out inside of our code. We're going to show you how you can use that now to troubleshoot. So we want to do some troubleshooting of our code that's writing from the functions file to our database and or to our submissions. We have the commented out var dumps field, so we're just going to remove these 2 backslashes and save this file. Then we can see what the effect is on the Ajax file and the information it provides us about all of this stuff up here versus all of this stuff down here. Let's make this a twofer and use the var dump to show how the hook with the record, new record, works and doesn't work with changing the name of your form. So this is 80s concerts ticket. We're going to rename this to, let's say we'll rename this to 90s concert tickets and save it. Now when we process our concert tickets, this shouldn't run. We've loaded up our same concert tickets form. The only thing we did was we changed the name to 90s form, NF at no name. All the other information is the same. And we're doing that just so we can verify what happens in submissions and into the database. So we'll do a send. Form sent successfully. We have an Ajax file. We've opened up our Ajax file and looking inside, and all the information is there just like it was before. It's all the same information except for the name now is 90s form. And if we go to the response field and we look, we have success true, form was sent successfully, look at raw data, and everything is still true, sent successfully. So now let's go look at the database and in the submissions form. Here we are back in our concert tickets table, and it still only shows the one we processed previously, the 80s concerts ticket, with the information from that. And while Ajax told us it processed the form successfully, there's nothing added to this table. Here we are in our admin panel and submissions of Elementor. We have the one we just processed today. And if we view that, submissions is still working or not working, whichever way you want to look at that. But if you'll see, it says 90s form. So it was processed, and it was processed successfully to submissions, but it doesn't write to the table because we changed the name in the form. The form name inside of our functions file. So that's how you control. And you could write a whole bunch of different ones for different forms to do different things. So here we are back in the functions file, and because we had this 90s, that's why it didn't capture or didn't process. It saw that and it just returned and didn't process any of this. We're going to change this back to 80s so it will work with our form. The var dump are still on, and that shows too that it didn't process because there wasn't, if it hit the var dump it would have dumped all of the records, but it never made it to there. It just dropped out. So now with the 80s and the var dump on, we can use this to troubleshoot an error in our processing. So we changed the form name back to 80s, and now we're going to process our form again. We're going to use the same ticket, but we're not going to change parking sticker, and we're not going to change special needs. Now proceed to options. Additional options, we're going to leave that no too. And provide who I am, and we're going to change this to second timer. Now with second timer, ST no mail, and the phone number in, we're going to do the send. Looks like it's sent, but it shows a parse error. That's because we have the var dump on, and it creates an error. Here's our AJAX file. Let's take a look at that. Opened it up, and the request looks good, except in here it's showing second timer. All the other fields are populated. So let's take a look at what was sent, the response. Whoops! No, that's what we want. Here's our var dumped. It shows us everything. And if we click this to raw, which makes it take it out of raw, and put it in format, we can see this and read this a lot easier. This makes it easy to compare to writing your code the way I did in the forms function, where you can just step down and go through your fields. Form was sent successfully. But do you see something here? Parking, null. Special needs, null. So we have null fields coming through. And we wouldn't see that on our form unless we wouldn't know that our form was doing that unless we had the var dump on like this. We don't want null coming through, so we'll go back and we'll modify our form to not have a null value. It has to either have a yes or a no. Special needs, a yes or a no. Extra options, a yes or no, no matter which way the toggle switch is switched. So we have to fix those. So we're back in our PHP for the table, and we still only have 4 records, but it was sent successfully. The reason it didn't process is because of those null values. And we wouldn't know that if we didn't have the var dump. You could have done this in either direction. We could have checked the table first and saw it didn't process anything, and then we could turn the var dump on. But we had turned the var dump on first. We're cheating. We knew it was going to fail. And so sure enough, the records didn't come through because of those null values. Now you could change your structure in a database to allow it, but we don't want to allow it. We want to have the correct input. That wraps it up for this video. Success. Quick recap. We took our form, we used the new record hook, added some of our own code to it, created and wrote to our WordPress database concert tickets table, and everything seems to be working fine now. Always remember that you should do verification and everything else. We're just trying to show you the submission part of this. There's a lot more work to make sure your code is fine. At the end of this, I'm going to add a little extra if you want to look at it or not, and that's a little bit about why I wrote the code the way I did. I was a programmer for years, and so I have this, I always add the headers. You'll see I put everything on separate lines. To me, this is just a lot easier when you're writing it to find your mistakes. When you come back, if you have to work on it again, it's easier to read this than one long line and try and figure out what's going on. So I know, here's a line, that's an item, that's an item, that's an item, that's an item. I have my end of the note. I have my beginning note. I have these little identifier notes. All of this stuff helps. And then I have this var dump. Var dump, I'm going to uncomment that. That's going to allow me to see exactly what records is pulling and what my reassignments look like before they get loaded into, or attempted to be loaded into, the table. I'll be able to see what the table actually got loaded, or what was the step after this process, by looking at that AJAX file. We can look at the response, and that will show what all of this was. And then I can compare this and this to see if there's mistakes, or to correct mistakes. I hope I made that simple enough. Thank you for watching, and if you can, subscribe. Take care.